penultimate week of the campaign. Many may see that as a relief. I'm actually quite enjoying this election campaign. I'm sure you are too, but working very hard. Maybe no one more so looking forward to the end of this campaign than Rishi Sunak.
Yes, I mean, the Tories have consistently given the impression of being taken by surprise by their own snap election, with the exception perhaps of the bets.
Well, yeah. So remind us of this. Well, I think it's safe to say scandal that is rumbling on. It started a week ago, 10 days ago, with Craig Williams,
Yes.
who was MP for Montgomeryshire, who has admitted that he made a bet on the date of the election. Flutter, he called it. It was about 100 quid, wasn't it? And since then, we've had some other names come out.
Yes.
And another one yesterday.
Yeah, and I think this is toxic for the Tories because this is very easily understood, and not that many things cut through to the wider electorate during a general election campaign, particularly when you've got a European Championship on, but this really does. And it just epitomizes the sense of a self-serving governing class who, as soon as it became clear there was going to be a snap election, thought, how can we profit from this before we're kicked out of office?
We must stress that at the moment there are only allegations, but what can you tell us about Nick Mason, which is the name that came out yesterday in the Sunday papers?
Well, so he is the Conservative Party's chief data officer. Not someone perhaps you'd assume would be involved in this, and as you say, that these are allegations, but these are senior figures, and he's taking a leave of absence, as has the director of campaigns at the Conservative Party. We're not talking here about local councillors or unknown party candidates. There's clearly a pattern developing, which is why people are asking who else was involved. Rumours that a minister or cabinet minister may have been involved.
That's what's doing the rounds today in Westminster, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And at the time of recording, we have no information on that.
But I think it's already spread far enough that it's disastrous for Sunak, along with, I think, his early exit from the D-Day commemoration. This is what voters will remember most from the campaign, which is a disaster for the Tories.
So the slightly different feature of the allegations against Nick Mason, this chief data officer, is that it's alleged that he actually made dozens of bets on May the 21st, which was the day before Rishi Sunak called the election. And there have been some really interesting graphs doing the rounds on social media, which essentially flatline and then a massive spike on May the 21st of a flurry of bets. There's sort of contradictory information coming out today about whether more people are under investigation or not. What are we hearing?
It is unclear, but it would not be a surprise if this went further. And obviously questions are being asked, just how much did Rishi Sunak know? Because really, it didn't leak. Yeah, there were journalists who spotted early on the signs that they may be going for a snap election, but it didn't leak in the way so many political announcements do. And therefore, Rishi Sunak must have kept this to quite a tight circle of people. And so he must have a good sense of who could have known and who could have placed bets. And he really hasn't gripped this in the way he needs to.
I mean, he can rightly feel furious if that is the case, clearly, that he had a trusted small circle of people that knew, and they've abused that trust, allegedly. Should the prospective candidates, at least, there are two of them, should they be suspended? It seems a no-brainer to me.
Yes, I mean, Labour did it with Azir Ali in the Rochdale by-election. Even though they would still appear on the ballot paper as Conservatives, you can withdraw support from them. But I suppose in a general election, the incentives not to do that are quite strong, because it's very rare for parties to withdraw support from someone. It was quite unusual when Labour did it for Azir Ali, and it would just be seen as a sign of Tory turmoil. But standing by them doesn't look great either.
It's terrible. No, I mean, Tobias Ellwood this morning calling for them now to have support withdrawn.
I think it's a no-brainer in that sense. But even if he does do that now, the damage is
too late.
The damage is done. The story's come through.
I mean, he said this lunchtime, Rishi Sunak, that is, that he's not aware of any other names being investigated, and yet the Times reporting much earlier on in the day that the Gambling Commission have confirmed they're potentially looking at hundreds more. So it is really unclear. What did you make of the intervention from Michael Gove on this?
Very unhelpful. To compare it to Partygate.
Yeah.
But I think it's an accurate comparison. It's that sense of self-serving governing class, one rule for us, another for them. But I imagine if you're a Conservative candidate who is standing for election, unlike Michael Gove, who's standing down, you'd be pretty angry at him, I imagine. But Michael Gove is someone, I think, who, to his credit, gives honest answers to questions.
He's usually very disciplined, though, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes, no, he.
So
I
he must
remember-
feel really very
Yeah.
strongly about
The
this.
first ITV debate between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, he was there in the spin room. Spinning, it has to say, in terms of Rishi Sunak's performance. So that struck me as quite unusual at the time for someone who was standing down. But he was there because, as you say, he's fluent, message discipline. So I think it was a sense of moral outrage over this.
One for Ben perhaps later in the week, but do you think this is going to have any influence on people once they get into the voting booths?
I think it will, in a subconscious sense, that people who have already resolved not to vote Conservative, perhaps having been long-time Conservative supporters or just backed them last time, will think affirmed in their choice. They'll think, look, I've made the right decision. This is just a disgrace. And it crowds out the other messages that the Conservatives are trying to promote. Don't let Labour win a supermajority. Don't trust them on tax. They're going to raise tax by more than they say. All of the conversation moving towards this makes it harder for them to get those messages out. So it hits the Conservative campaign in multiple ways.
At the weekend, Rishi Sunak spent much of his time in his constituency up in North Yorkshire, in Richmond and North Allerton. Is he, do you think, genuinely worried that he could lose that seat?
I think he is. I don't think he would have made 5 or so visits to that seat during the campaign if he wasn't. Quite often, the Prime Minister will not spend much time in their seat. Normally, it's a very safe seat, and they've got better things to be doing. A visit from the Prime Minister is one of the things that candidates in marginal seats want the most, and so that's normally where they focus their efforts. So that is striking, and there has been a constituency poll done, which actually gives him quite a decent lead. I think it was around 8 or 9 points, but that's still tighter than you'd want. And there are other polls that have shown it's too close to call. So I still think it'd be a surprise if he loses it. But given the scale of the swing that we're seeing away from the Conservatives, it's definitely in play.
George, I say this with affection, but as a political anorak, can you tell me whether, if he lost his seat, would that be the first time a sitting Prime Minister had done so?
I think it would be. I would have to check that, I confess, but I think it would be.